wanted to start with humanizing heroes. So it's not the hero you will see in a movie. It's actually mapping and showcasing and storytelling about the everyday hero that are already doing the work.
This is Climate Curious, the podcast for people who are bored, scared, or confused by climate change.
I'm Maryam, Pasha, the director and curator at TEDxLondon and the co-host of this podcast, alongside the amazing Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Hurst, activist and advocate exploring what positive masculinities can look like, and self-confessed climate normie.
Hey, Ben.
Hey!
I have a very important question for you.
Okay, am I ready? Am I ready for a very important question?
Today, if you had to choose between Enrique Iglesias and Mariah Carey, who would it be?
Maryam, this is literally an impossible question to answer.
Stop delaying.
Why would you even ask?
Answer the question.
I feel conflicted. I'm gonna go with Mariah for iconic status.
Fantastic.
I have
so
to.
now that you've chosen, you are going to... This is, by the way, listeners, this is related to this episode. We have not gone totally off script. Ben, I want you to serenade our listeners, please, to start this episode.
Are you sure that they're ready?
I don't think they are, but let's do
And
it.
then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and then you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive.
Right, I think that's good.
What? Not being asked to serenade the audience and then being stopped. So where you fit? No, that's fine. That's enough.
Fine. I think that's enough. I think so. Now we know that at least the people who are left listening really want to hear the rest of this episode.
Subscribe to my Patreon if you're interested in it, which is a good segue.
Which is a good segue because we are talking to, I would say, both a hero and a hero enabler today.
Oh yes, my type of person, eh?
Right, and this is a really exciting conversation because I think it is one that I've wanted to have since I first found out about, well, the platform and this individual, because they're pretty cool. So today we're joined by Mauricio Porras, who is the founder and chief mobilization officer of Hero app. Now, you're all going to hear how awesome Mauricio is, but let me tell you a little bit more about his background because I think it's quite important to understand in order to understand the awesomeness that he's created. He has a background in political strategy and social mobilization, and this is very cool. He was head of digital political strategy for one of Costa Rica's presidential candidates, which is pretty cool because he is from Costa Rica. If you follow climate, Costa Rica is one of the climate leaders. And so it's kind of unsurprising to me and yet awesome to have Mauricio with us here today to talk about his work with Hero app, supporting climate campaigners all around the world. So let's just jump into it because we have a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So we've had some pretty awesome activists on this podcast over the last 2.5 years. And I think many of them young activists, and each of them has talked in their own way about the difficulties of doing this work, both psychologically, financially, personally, the barriers that they face, all of the different kinds of things. And one thing that has struck me in all of those conversations is that, you know, these young people and or older people who are activists have very much, this is their life's path. Like they have had to make decisions to not do other things that maybe they were interested in or love to do this work, which is why I'm super excited that we get to have this conversation with Mauricio.
I mean, this conversation feels timely because everybody is broke. It's a cost of living crisis out here. The streets are cold. No one's making any money. And you're right.
You should all know that Ben is dressed in head to toe pearls. But yes,
well, you know, I made these. We'll talk about that another time, another episode. But
let's get into it because I want. Welcome, Mauricio. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
If you can just tell people a bit about Hero and what it is in case people haven't heard about it, because I'd like to start with that work.
Sure. So Hero is the first climate platform powered by citizens. It allows you to fund the top climate campaigners, upcoming campaigners doing what we call the most important job of our time, and it allows you to fund them directly. Just like other platforms, for example, like Patreon, where you fund artists, this is your platform to fund the top campaigners in the world to enact policy change from the ground up.
So good.
I have to tell you, I remember the first time this popped up on I think it was on my Instagram feed. And I was just like, oh my God, how has someone not done? It was one of those ideas where you're like, surely someone has done this before because this is brilliant. Yeah. Because I think there's just something amazing about directly being able to support causes, not having to go through intermediaries, not knowing if those intermediaries or organizations are going to support the kinds of work or even the individuals who do great work, and you want to kind of make sure they continue doing it. So for those who haven't come across this on their feed yet, tell us how it works.
Yeah, so you know that there's thousands of climate campaigners. There's a whole new generation that wants to take action for their future and our future. And the way we work is that we have vetted the most promising upcoming climate campaigners through an independent board. So we've worked a lot on the governance of Hero to strive for transparency. So we have an independent board. Campaigners apply all over the world to Hero to be in the platform, and they're vetted. And the main aspect that we take a look at is the fact that they have a track record of non-violent advocacy, and that they're focused on policy change. We really want to push, the bar up in terms of policy change, where we see that is where we can have the biggest impact.
Important. Because policy change is not. It's not cool, is it? I mean, speaking honestly, it doesn't feel like the coolest thing of all time.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is it's not just you and your mates. Like, you have vetted these people. You have a way that people get onto your platform. That feels very thorough. But I do think what you're saying, Ben, around policy change is interesting, because I worked in policy change for a bit.
I mean, it is cool. It is cool.
But what I mean is that it's hard.
It's complex.
It's complex, but actually one of the things I found was that it's hard to get funding for it.
Right.
Because people want to fund things where they can see the change right away. They want to fund like a shelter or a thing, like a thing. They don't necessarily understand how to fund policy change.
Yeah, no, and it has been a challenge because we've wanted to disrupt the way that you approach climate action. So Hero has like several components that make it very unique. For example, I was having a conversation the other day saying like, what I love about Hero is that when you think of climate action, you think about saving, tigers, or planting trees or coral reefs. But with Hero, you can actually support humans. Like, you can have a direct connection with those and support their journey from the ground up. So that's one of the unique pieces of Hero. The second one is that we're moving from the donations model to a subscription. So that's important because we're approaching this as a climate tech startup. And it's basically pioneering a new purpose economy. You said it at the beginning. This generation wants to live out of this work because it's crucial.
Yeah.
So we are seeing it like trying to transition from this is a volunteer job that I do on the side to this is actually my profession, being a climate campaigner.
Right.
And we believe that, citizens can power that change and power those stories.
Because it's a difficult thing, right? Like, immediately when you started talking about this, I was thinking, so is this a way for climate activists to get a salary? Because I feel like the thing that stops, the big barrier, is that people are often working for months or years at a time with no real income stream, which ends up looking like a lot of sacrifice. And I think that's probably one of the things that we don't really talk about. It's just this expectation that people will do this work for free because they believe it's important or because they care about it or because they're good people. But actually, like, the practicalities of that are, in lots of cases, unbearable. I imagine that's a reason why loads of people start
when they're young,
and are super zealous when they're young, and then realise that they start having families or want to move houses or want to be able to look after themselves or have dependents or need to provide for people, and then that's game over. You have to switch and get a corporate job where your job is just to tell people in corporates that they should care about this stuff rather than doing the actual work in lots of cases. So that's a cool way of doing it.
And then you lose all that amazing people. We're seeing 5 years ahead.
Yeah.
and thinking like, okay, this 21-year-old, 22-year-old campaigners, they're all in today, but we still live in a capitalistic system. So as you said, you need to pay the rent, you need to pay the bills, you need to make a living out of your career. So how do we engage or keep them engaged in the long run? Because we have 7 years to bring down global temperature to 1.5, and we cannot afford to lose them in 2 years. So who then secures those policies?
There's something here as well about who gets to do this work.
Yeah.
That is so fundamental here when you talk about it for me, is so often you only get to do this work if you have a degree of privilege, if you can live at home, or if someone can, you know what I mean? And I feel like what you're trying to do is undermine, in a positive way, those entrenched kind of class or economic divides.
Yeah, we want to empower people to empower these campaigners from the ground up. They're working in their local communities, and then they go to the global stage. We've seen various examples of this. Elizabeth Watuti, for example, in Africa, she started in her local community. Now she's negotiating at COP, the loss and damage agreement, for example. Adelaide, organizing in Belgium, and now she's literally holding politicians accountable at the EU level. So these are the stories that we want to multiply by the thousands. We actually have a goal in the next 5 years, with the help of citizens, to fund the next generation of 10,000 climate campaigners. So just imagine what the world could look like if we had 10,000 Gretas, 10,000 Liz Watutis, and so on. It would look totally different.
Yeah.
And how did you arrive here? Like, how do you wake up one day and be like, this is what I'm going to do. I've decided that this is an important cause.
Yeah, I think it comes, my purpose, and I'm talking personally, has always been to empower people to use their talents at the service of others. I think that when you put your talents there, it's where you really connect with that spark. So I've always been intrigued in finding ways of just amplifying that. And I think the second step was like hyper focus. Like I've been trying to disrupt, the social and environmental sector by finding new approaches and new ways of doing this. And by being so focused on it, I started noticing, okay, so there's a problem here with funding. There's a problem here with how the climate topic is being communicated. So we have a funding issue, we have a communications issue, a storytelling issue. So how can we make this, an opportunity kind of story instead of, we're all gonna die very soon.
It's over.
And we cannot do anything about it. So I found two amazing people that think just like me. So Silvana and Mohammed, and they had the same hyper-focused and passion for the topic, and that mix of all the perspectives. So I'm from Costa Rica, Silvana is from France, Mohammed is from Tunisia. So three people from three different continents approaching this with their own perspectives and the ones of the people around us. I think it's what makes the hero story unique.
Such an important example of like what innovation can look like, right? Because I think that's another big part of this, is that we see activism, particularly climate activism, as a very specific set of actions that people have to take that's quite limited. But this is like I would never have, like you said, who thinks of that, or why would you think of that? I would never have thought of that as which is why you're sitting over there and I'm sitting over here, right?
Wondered if you could give us some examples of like where activists that you're working with on this app are from and the kinds of work that they're doing.
Yeah, so right now we have campaigners from 16 different countries, so that's really cool. We just started last year, so that gives you a perspective of how many people are still there that could be part of this if more citizens join and support. But basically we have like a regional LATAM circle. So circles are the groups of campaigners, which is also a unique aspect of Hero, is that you don't fund them individually, you fund them as a group.
Oh, wow.
So it's a collective.
It's well
ritual.
thought out, no?
Yeah. I was like, how do you not just pick all your favorites and leave everybody else to be broke? And that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah. So we really want to move from the I to the we, and we really want to change that within the movement and also, on the citizen level. So in Latam, we have a circle that has been very successful at advocating for the Escazú Agreement, which is a regional treaty that secures the defenders' rights, more transparency in governmental decisions on climate. Mm-hmm. We have the Indigenous Rights Circle, which is working to protect the Amazon with indigenous peoples to protect, their lands and their rights, and involve them in climate negotiations.
Right. Before we move on, for people who haven't heard that phrase, what is Latam? Will you tell us?
Latin America.
And what's defenders' rights?
Defenders' rights. So you have these campaigners at the front lines of action, and Latin America is one of the most dangerous places to be a campaigner.
Right.
So currently, before the Escazú Agreement, actually, there were no constitutional rights or legal binding agreements that protects them. So if you're advocating for an indigenous community and you get killed,
which happens,
sucks to be
actually,
you.
there's
which
no
happens.
consequences today, and that happens more often than we would like to share. But now with this treaty, now that's changing because it's going to have consequences, legally binding consequences, and it protects and puts environmental defenders at the center of those agreements. That's an example of how policy can really, start to create the system change.
Yeah, and save lives in lots of ways.
Well, because people feel like people don't have to, I always think, why do we have to, there's something about why do you have to put your life on the line?
Right.
And I think we romanticize it actually in society.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be necessary. Like you shouldn't have to die. I think Kumi Nadu said this to us. Do you remember in an interview, he said someone asked him when he was leaving South Africa and about what he wanted to do in his life. And he said, I want to give my life for the cause. And the person he was talking to said, no,
that's not it, bro.
You want to live your life for the cause.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. I remember being like, oh, yeah, like, okay.
Yeah. Because we really make martyrs out of people, especially our young people.
Yeah.
We expect them to sacrifice their whole lives when actually a big part of this is just normalizing the fact that all of us are part of it and like everybody's got responsibility to do something. But this is nice because it provides people with a direct route to take on that responsibility for themselves without necessarily feeling like they have to be in the streets and doing stuff, even though they should also be doing those things. But a nice way to give people a route to making change. How do you decide who's in the circles?
Yeah, so they apply to Hero and they choose the focus of the policy that they will be working on. So then they join circles that are focused on those policies. So you find other people working on those topics. And also the global aspect is that then you get to share best practices. For example, using the same Escazú Agreement example, it's the first treaty of its kind.
Right.
So that could easily be replicated in Europe. Why not? And all the expertise that now the campaigners in Latin America have around that treaty can be passed on to people in the same circle working on similar topics to protect those. So there's something around Hero about sharing knowledge, around accelerating change through that collective effort.
I always think that one of the biggest learnings for me in this kind of work was understanding that there is a reason why we try to keep people not we, but like the system tries to keep people separate, because actually it's very powerful to be able to share learnings across huge distances that would not have been able to happen like 20 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And I think there's something very powerful about it, because actually it's like using some of the tactics and the tools that, let's say, certain kinds of companies that dig certain things out of the ground
Yeah.
and burn them use all
Allegedly.
the time, right?
Yeah.
They will absolutely take a strategy that's worked to, let's say, lobby against a policy in one part of the world and replicate that strategy in another part of the world, or a strategy to suppress activists in one other part of the world and replicate it somewhere else. And if we can take our knowledge of combating that successfully and replicate it, and we're kind of fighting them in their own game, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a perfect example, because the way Hero has been built is from the inside out of the system. Instead of tackling the system from the outside, we decided to build it from the inside out. And then you have the perspective of a startup, of a subscription, of thinking of these campaigners as, instead of volunteers, as professionals that are doing the job. And citizen support allows them to be independent. That's super important as well, because then if citizens are funding you, then you don't have like a specific agenda that you are, maybe you get a fund or a grant, and maybe they're going to push for a specific topic,
Outcomes,
which is totally fine, right? But this gives a lot of freedom to the campaigners to actually advocate more freely for the specific causes and issues that they see in their countries.
And that really is a tool that's used, isn't it? Like, the more you can keep people reinventing the wheel, is like the less time that they have to actually do things.
Yeah.
I think there is, just to follow up on that in terms of funding particularly.
Yeah.
The more time you can keep, like the more time people have to waste writing applications, reporting on things for like
Researching.
a tiny grant
Yeah.
for 1 year. Every time I hear about it, it boggles my mind. And we know that if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you come from a certain community, you get even smaller pots of funding with even more strings attached. And so you can't do this kind of unrestricted, agile, responsive work that's necessary.
Yeah. And we are, we're moving into the basic income concepts that are, discussed across the world as a way to also, distribute wealth and support each other. So there's a lot of components that actually, obviously I love what we're doing, so but also make it complex to tell the story as well. So this is something very new, and people have a lot of questions like, why should I fund them? How do they work? Why do they need money to do this work?
I love that idea of storytelling as well, right? Because it feels like this is all very intentional. Like, I feel like even just the branding of it, right? Like calling it Hero, like, where does that come from? What's the story behind how you're selling this to people?
Yeah, so we wanted to start with humanizing heroes. So it's not the hero you would see in a movie. It's actually mapping and showcasing and storytelling about the everyday heroes that are already doing the work. And for us, a hero is someone that moves from an ideal to action. And within that, you could have citizens as heroes, or the campaigners themselves on the front lines. So for us, it's about doing something, about not settling for the problem. And so if you decide to fund, then you're already doing something. You moved from there's a problem to there's an opportunity. And the same for the campaigner. So everyone for us that moves into action is actually a hero.
Oh,
I know. I feel so special right now.
The look on Ben's face. I wonder, I have a question. Do you find that part of what you need to do when you're communicating this concept is get over or help people get over the mental blocks or barriers they have? Because I wonder if we think that activists have to be doing it for free, like whether there's something where people are like, well, if they get paid somehow they're not pure enough, or I just wonder if do you get any of that, or do you think people come up against that? Because it feels to me that we do have this way of thinking about sacrifice.
Yeah, we're talking about disrupting a system that has worked like this for I don't know how many years, to be honest. Pushing for everything that's nonprofit goes in one bucket,
right?
And then we make the business. And so we're trying to really, bring, as you said, the best practices. we should have the best storytelling available, the best tech, the best business models to build this from the ground up. So we have seen a lot of questions, and people are curious about why this and how does it work. And I think the biggest challenge we have is to burst the climate bubble or the climate space, because obviously within the space there's a lot of excitement, a lot of people that are supporting, but we cannot forget that there's people outside those spaces that even listening or hearing about climate change is very overwhelming, and then it's just like a showstopper. So this is too complex for me. What we're trying is to humanize the cause, humanize the work, and try to power journeys of people from the ground up that are relatable.
How much does a subscription cost? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it starts at €6. So 2 coffees, a couple
month,
of beers,
Really?
a month.
In London, that's one coffee.
In London, that's half a coffee.
In New York, it's definitely half a coffee.
Yeah, but when you put it in perspective, so what we're trying to do, because generally how this works is you get, big chunks of funding, and then you fund, and it's a process that you just described. You have all these applications and all this sort of bureaucracy, and it doesn't reach everyone. With this, it's €6, but if we get 10,000 people to put €6, 20,000 and so on, then it becomes an interesting amount to provide a stable income to all these campaigners.
Right. Do you have? I know you said 10,000 campaigners in circles, right? Is that I understood that correctly?
That's the goal.
That's the goal, right? No, that's not. That's like that's the vision. That's the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
What do you also have a vision on where you want to get to in terms of how much you're able to bring in for those people? Like, do you have
how many citizens are involved?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, millions of citizens. I think, when you look at the numbers of citizens in the world, our goal is to reach out to everyone. Yeah. I think everyone has the power to do something, and what we're striving for is to make it as easy, as seamless as possible for people to just say, okay, I care about climate. Sometimes I don't have the time. I have also my career, which I love, and it's totally fine. But this is a very simple way to just, with your phone, literally €6 a month, have a very outsized impact.
This is so interesting. I feel like a proper venture capitalist sitting here. I feel like I'm being pitched to. This is so good.
Right. This is actually about your own self-interest. Right. If you were smart, you would be like,
invest.
I want to have a future.
Yeah.
Can I? Just like you invest in your pension, or you invest in other kinds of things. Maybe it's like people go to the gym to invest in their bodies so that they have a body when they get old. I have not invested enough in my knees.
Me either.
But it is that mindset shift. I think that's really actually is super cool.
Yeah.
Because I do think that part of what I think the passiveness that people might feel when they give.
Gosh, yeah.
I feel it. Like, I'm someone who's super passionate about causes, and sometimes I feel like I just lose my energy when I'm just giving to something, and then it's like, oh, I've done. It's like given and it's gone.
Yeah.
But when I feel like I'm investing in something, when I feel like I'm engaging in something, I have such a different energy about it. And I then, in a way, I guess there's like this secondary benefit that if people are engaged, they might be even more engaged, and you have all these knock-on effects. You're smiling like, don't tell them that's the real goal.
That's the secret.
No. Actually, you're hitting the right spot, because I think that's what this is all about. Like, we have put a lot of mind and thoughts into how to put this in the, this power, to give this power a full tool and put it in the hands of everyday citizens. Like, we want this tool to be the tool for people and by people, right? So it's not about just, getting, the certain funds, to just scale this and get the funding. It's actually about involving the citizens in the whole journey. Because when they're supporting these campaigners, they're not just giving. They're actually, as you said, investing. They become part of their journey. So, you can fund an upcoming climate campaigner that you haven't heard about in the news yet, and then seeing their progress in the next 2 years when they have the tools, the funding, and seeing them at the global stage, that was because of you. And the third thing is that we are working really hard to get those your name in those victories. So when a policy is passed, you were part of it. So you have a share of that action, and we're building towards that collective.
And honestly, there is nothing I like more than knowing about things before other people. I feel like this is like I am downloaded this today just so I can say in 5 years, I knew about that.
You know, I will say,
that.
So I know some of the activists on the platform. And that was cool, right? Because I was like, yeah, like these people do great work. Yeah. And you don't want to be like, hey, friend, can I give you some money? Because that's really super patronizing. But if I'm like, hey, friend, can I enable you to make sure that like I have a future? I'm up for it. Yeah. But then also it allowed me to go and look at like the other activists in their circle and be like, oh, I haven't heard about this person who's doing this like cool stuff that I care about and didn't know.
I didn't even know I cared about.
Well, no, it did care about, but I didn't know the person doing the work on it. And so then I was able to like discover. So I think this is just to say that I was a big fan, and now you are a big fan.
I'm a big fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this. I feel like the number one question that we get asked, right, is always, what do I do? Like, what can I actually do to change the tide? It feels too big, it feels scary, it feels intimidating. I definitely care, but I feel powerless. And I feel like this is a really easy way, easy if you've got the money, but a really, really easy way. Like, I love what you said about like streamlining and refining the process and making it simpler for people as well, because it does feel like it's literally a couple of clicks away, the difference between me doing nothing and me having a massive impact
and feeling a feeling of agency.
Yeah, feeling like you are able to do something, like you're making choices and decisions that are benefiting the world, right?
And I think I heard it from you or read it in a post about that story. The great storytelling was about practice.
Right.
So just think about it in the same way. The more time, the more resources these campaigners can have to do better, to learn more, to share, to professionalize more their new careers on climate, the better they're going to get. And that's that's what we need to do. Like it's the same for any other career. Why is climate campaigning not a professional career? Right. And that's what we want to change.
That's a great line.
I love this so much.
I know.
Why is it not a professional career, and how do we change it?
Before we move to our last extremely fun segment, I wanted to ask you if there was something on this journey that you've been on that has surprised you.
A lot of things. It's a hard one. I think I knew that people wanted to change the world, and I saw the passion, and that's what drove me to like, these people need to be supported. But I think it's the level of commitment, like with or without the funding, these campaigners are going to do it. And I think that's so impressive,
right?
Because it's you ask me if this has changed something. Of course, they can dedicate more time, but the passion hasn't changed. So I'm really surprised, or in a good way, that what I saw from the outside, living in Costa Rica, seeing all these European activists from far, now that I meet them and I work with them, and seeing like, okay, like this is for real. They're not gonna stop, and they're in for it. Yeah, I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, they're not bullshitting.
That's motivating.
They're serious
for you
out
to keep
here.
doing it. So we're very excited on the podcast because we're going to be profiling various circles over the next coming months. So you'll be able to hear from the heroes and the activists and the campaigners in these various circles around the world, and hopefully that will inspire you all to like sacrifice 2 coffees a month, and
half a coffee a month,
or if you live in New York or London, a sip of coffee a month.
It's gonna be worth it.
To support them, and you'll get to know them a bit on the podcast. Which we're super excited to be able to do with you, because
thank you for
can't imagine a better group of people to amplify. Actually,
thank you for that, man. Thank you.
I think what I love about Hero is the collective. Like, this is not about Hero.
Right.
Hero is just one piece of the puzzle, the same way you guys are another piece of the puzzle. And if we start putting all these pieces together, when we take a look, you know, like from up, it's going to look amazing.
And the scalability potential of it is so exciting as well.
Look
When
at you, VC.
I know,
VC
look at me. I'm
leverage.
like, guys, this is a real opportunity for us to invest here. But I do think like so many people are so limited in the work that they're doing, whatever sector that work is in, because there's just not accessible streams of funding. And so this is like, I don't know. I feel so gutted that I didn't come up with this myself, honestly. But you have done a good job, because this is a really important piece of the puzzle.
And it's hard, right? Like, we're so excited that you've come and spent this time with us. We want to do one last thing with you, if that's okay. It's time for...
And now, it's time for our climate confessions. Let's fess up to the bad habits we just can't kick.
Yeah, I love that Mauricio's joined in the song. Right. Okay. For those of you who do not know what climate confessions are, this is the segment of our episode where we ask each other and the guests our climate confession. And that is not to shame. Just to be clear,
Not to shame you.
it is to instead to show that even though we bring really awesome people on the podcast, where it might seem like everything they do is perfect, we want to lift that veil and show that actually all of us have climate confessions, and that's okay.
We're
'Cause you can
humanizing
still
the
make
heroes.
a difference and not be perfect.
Right.
So,
This is the part where in the WhatsApp group, Mauricio just left.
yes.
yeah. This is that part.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye.
Yeah. So Ben, let's start with you. It's been a while, so
It
I
has
want
been
a
a while.
climate
Listen,
confession.
I've got many climate confessions. I've been traveling this last month. So where have I been? I've been to Jamaica and I've been to North Carolina. And it was really nice. I went to Jamaica on holiday. I had a lovely time. That's what I'm going to say about that. I had a lovely time.
Did you see family though?
No. My family's in Barbados and St. Lucia.
But I thought they were in
Jamaica.
North Carolina.
Oh, I do have family in North Carolina, but no, I didn't see them. I wasn't there for that. I was there for stuff. I was on business. I was doing work. But what I've realised is that I have not even thought about what offsetting my carbon footprint looks like. I don't know if carbon footprint is the right way of describing it, but I've been flying all around the place, and I actually took an extra flight back home from Jamaica to be home for a day to then fly back another 8 hours to North Carolina, which is not an effective use of air miles or traveling. So I think that's my climate confession, that I'm just absolutely reckless. I think when we started having these conversations, I wasn't really traveling that much.
Right.
And it was during pandemic, so no one was going anywhere. And I was listening to people talk about offsetting, and I was like, yeah, that's so good. Yeah, go for it. And actually, now it's my turn. So I've got to do some thinking about investing in some plots of land somewhere in Wales and planting some trees or something. I don't know what to do, but that's going to be the goal this season. Yeah.
Okay, Mauricio, over to you for your climate confession.
Feel the...
People really struggle with this.
No. I mean, I think I have two confessions.
Okay.
So
We'll
I'm
take
going to
them
go
both.
with two. Yeah. I mean, I took a flight to come here, but I had to come here and meet you guys, be in person.
And you're doing other things. So you are like doing the thing we're told to do, which is...
Exactly. Make the most out of it. So it's okay, but you still have like, I could have taken the train. But then I wouldn't be here on time. So, you have to make some choices. And I think the second one, it's more around a mindset. It's like keeping that perspective that all of us are human, that all of us have different processes and acknowledge the climate crisis in different ways. And I think it's more about having that patience and empathy. Because when you're so like digged in the topic, then you want everyone to be as passionate about it. And I think I always need to keep that perspective of, I'm really passionate about this and many other people around me, but we still have like a long way, and we need to be empathetic and find ways to create those connections instead of, come on, do something.
Getting frustrated.
So
Nice.
What's yours?
Oh.
I'm not going to forget.
I'm not going to go with travel because I said that so many times. Oh, you know what my climate confession is? It's so bad too. So if you are a long-time listener of this podcast, you will know that many, maybe even over a year ago.
Many moons
ago, one of our team submitted a climate confession, which was that they get coffee delivered to their house.
And you were like, that's a good idea.
And I was like, wait, you can get coffee delivered to your house? And so I've been really busy.
No.
And so now I have a Starbucks near our house that delivers and they never spill it. And it's like perfect. And especially with iced coffee, because it's hard to make a good iced coffee at home. That's my climate confession, is that I was inspired by someone else's confession to adopt that behavior. So, yeah. I do, though, because I'm at home, I do recycle all the cups.
Good.
So at least I do that. I don't just throw them in the bin.
Forever forward.
Forever
Good.
forward.
Movement in the right direction.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
Thank
it
you,
has been wonderful. We could talk for hours about this. I am excited to have you back in less than 5 years when you've hit that 10,000 to talk about all of those impacts. And do listen to the quickies and the shorts we have with all of the circles that will be coming up. Where can people find you?
Yeah, heroescircle.app. That's APP. Yeah. €6 a month, outsized impact, amazing climate campaigners.
It's a really good idea. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be doing it.
I mean, then you can look back and say, I supported these guys when they were talking about getting 10,000. Now they're in the millions.
Yeah. Be one of the early adopters so that you could be superior to other people is what Ben is saying.
So that you can brag.
Why not? Whatever drives you.
Yeah, right. Whatever floats your boat. No judgment here. This has been really fun. Until next time.
Stay curious. Thank you for joining us this week. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you did, please hit the follow button to make sure you get next week's release.
We are now officially crowdsourcing Climate Confession, so please leave yours in the ratings and the review section, and we'll shout out for you next time. And shout out to our fabulous team behind the pod.
This episode was produced by Josie Colter.
Comms written by Tess Lowry.
Artwork designed by Rebecca Mingus.
Curation by Maryam Pasha.
Mixed and engineered by Ben Beheshty.
Music also by Ben Beheshty.
Presented by Ben Hurst
and Maryam Pasha. Remember, stay curious.